Um, we are in 87 zip codes in San Diego County, all 17 cities and unincorporated areas. Available by subscription online, over-the-counter single copy sales at newsstands. And so pretty easy to find. And we publish weekly because we are a legal newspaper. We must hear the California Government Code requirements for legal publications. So that means that we are as legal as the UT or the transcript or any other publication carrying legal notices. It's just that we might have more color on our pages because of the primary clientele that we serve. So we're very happy to have this opportunity to join you again. You may interact with us if you choose to do so. Our telephone number is 1-858 251 6111, or you may join us on the internet at godradio1.com and follow us on Facebook. And we welcome your calls, your comments, your questions, your input. We like for this to be interactive, and we like to try to spend time on those topics that the big time daily talk show people don't do. We like to give time and attention to our community because our slogan is a people without a voice cannot be heard. And we certainly appreciate being the voice of both the African and African American communities. And we also like to remind our young people that social media is no substitute for being informed and being in touch uh, with the publication that represents your roots. The African American newspapers, there are about 200 of us left in the country. We're now in our 192nd year. So we've been around a very long time. Voice and Viewpoint's been around 60 years, going into our 60th year. We have some papers such as the Afro Americans in Baltimore, Pittsburgh area that are celebrating 125 or 130 years of publication. The Baltimore papers, they've still been family owned all of this time, with the generations continuing. So there's much to be said. And I often say that if newspapers didn't still have value, you wouldn't have people like Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon, buying the Washington Post, Warren Buffett buying papers. And so billionaires don't make bad investments. And so we know that newspaper ownership has been the foundation of many fortunes in this country. And even though um, things are changing in terms of the uh, entity itself morphing into online, there is still a demand and a desire for print publication. And I also like to share the fact that a lot of people don't realize that surveys of readership in America show that African Americans are one of the most well read groups of people, though our numbers might be small in this country. So we care a great deal about being informed and being advised. And we're excited to just kind of give you that backdrop as we get ready to talk this evening with you, take your calls if you have some. We recently celebrated the resumption of our now very much appraised activity, Biscuit, Grits, and Politics. And so we had phase two of that yesterday morning, Tuesday morning, at the Voice and Viewpoint offices, which we turned into a very nice dining facility. And we were there. We started serving at 7:30. People were coming at 7. We were there at 9, and we had discussion. We had hot grits, great scrambled eggs, catfish nuggets, beef and pork links, uh, along with those biscuits. And we had fruit for those who did not want to eat anything that early, and they really went through the fruit. And we had coffee, regular, decaf, tea, orange juice. So we had just a great time, and there were seconds and thirds for all those who wanted them. Some people were seen smuggling plates out the door wrapped in aluminum foil. I guess they thought it was a take-home thing, eat all you can and take all you can get. So we tried to feed the mind as well as the stomach, as we talked about the current political issues. We talked about the impeachment that's underway. We talked about the politics in the state of California and around the country and who is important and what the issues are. Some of that we will share again with you this evening. So Dr. Thompson is here, and he's going to tell you what they did to memorialize this, because we're be ready to broadcast a podcast of that real soon. So would you share with us, Dr. Thompson?
Well, Dr. Warren, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure and exciting to be at Biscuits, Grits, and Politics. I know that we had done it in the past, and it was something that you first branded and copywritten to begin to have a really unique environment to have true conversation without a lot of pontificating and just a lot of hot air, but really getting down to the issues. And so we decided that when we got together, you said, you know what, let's do it in the morning. Let's make sure that it's in a certain time frame so
Yes.
people can be there and yet still go to work and still stay
Right.
focused. And then I remember when you came up and you said, look, I got this concept. And you said, biscuits, grits, and politics. And the first thing we said, we got to copyright that right now. We got to make sure, because really what I saw when you came up with this years ago was really that this is going to be actually a national syndicated show called Biscuits, Grits, and Politics. And once a month, it would bring this political forum to begin to talk about different things. So I love the way that you set the atmosphere for the first one, where you basically gave people some background. You gave them some history. You gave them a history lesson. And this one, you did a little bit more of the narration. And then it was exciting to meet the managing editor and publisher with the Voice of Viewpoint. Am I saying that right?
Managing editor Latanya
Yeah,
West.
yeah, it was wonderful to have her now coming into the forefront and being a part of the vision of the newly vamped and expansive San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. It was nice to see Dr. Willie Blair from BayPAC come on, and now the atmosphere has been set. And now we're getting ready for phase two, because we're in the biggest political fight in the nation, and we're going to be taking on all the different people that are running, not only locally but statewide, and there might be even some national people that are going to want to come to Biscuits, Grits, and Politics,
I think there will be
because we're going to be airing it, and
as
it's going
we
to hit all
air
over
it.
there.
Yes.
So I just want to say kudos to you. Kudos to the way you set it up. It was very intimate, but it's so funny to watch people when they get to grits. And it tickled me because there was more people that did not look like us going back for seconds and the thirds on them grits. And I said, boy, they might never had a grit before, but now they know what the grits are.
Yeah, because some people really they say they know, but they don't. But it was a natural being from the South,
Uh-huh.
because one of the things, especially down in Florida, when we eat in the afternoon, sometimes even and have fish, people will have grits and fish,
Hmm.
which goes together. Or in the Carolinas, where I'm from, in the mornings we'd have grits and red eye gravy,
Uh-huh.
which is the gravy from the country ham
Uh-huh.
with the eggs, scrambled eggs mixed in with it. And so the one thing, the biscuits were great. They weren't Pillsbury, but this next time we're gonna make sure that they're really warmer.
So
And
that
we're
when
gonna
we
have,
put the butter in it, you get that heat off the heat
yeah,
when you open it up.
the butter just kind of helps it along, you know.
Yeah, and
And
can I say that, because I used to think that red eye gravy was
the,
that red clay gravy that they used to talk
mm-mm,
about back,
mm-mm.
that people eat in the South. So the red eye gravy is from the ham.
The red eye gravy is from the ham. And you notice, speaking about the ham, on the East Coast, Smithfield hams, country ham is famous and popular. And out here, you can find one from time to time. But they have something very unique in D.C., and my sister always sends it to me. They have sliced country ham and freeze packed it in these little packets, and they sell it in the 99-cent stores for like 99 cents a pack. and you can open it and peel it up, and it's good for seasoning your greens and your black eyed peas and your beans and things. And so it's not just for the health people. It's not just a matter of you eating pork, but there's a seasoning that goes.
Mhm.
And when the ham is cooked, the salt that comes off with it, it makes that red eye gravy that when you pour it over into the grits, it adds to the flavor of it with the butter.
Mhm.
So we just gonna keep them stirred up in terms
Mhm.
of both feeding, if we can, the mind and the stomach,
Yeah,
make it work.
and one of the things I would say is that, and every plate was hearty. It wasn't like, okay, you get, how you go someplace, you get just a little dab of this, a little dab of that. Folks had hearty plates. I remember when you were meeting with the caterer, you said, look, she was like, oh, well, we're gonna do frittatas and everything. He said, no, I want some soft scrambled eggs so I can mix them in with my grits,
Yeah,
and
and she made them just right too,
mhm.
because a lot of people don't know how to do that. But she made those things just right the way she did it, and it was really great. It was great.
So if you all are
Yeah.
not hungry right now, if you all want to get be a part of the Biscuits, Grits, and Politics, our next one will be second Tuesday in December, and we'll be
Yes.
making a grand announcement of who will be on the docket. When I tell you it's going to be hotter than fish grease, it's going to be hotter than fish grease. Now, Dr. Warren, people need to understand that there's not unlimited seating. You know,
No.
so tell
And
them about that.
that's very important statement, because we don't have unlimited numbers there. We probably can comfortably get about 75 people in there, so we'll be the first 75 that we serve, and then we had some people come at the end, and it's only $15 a person for the meal, but you certainly can't come at the end and try to skip the food and grab the conversation.
Yeah.
The people say if you come through the door, it's $15. It's like going to the movies. You got to pay to get in, and you can either walk around, leave, or sit. But it's the whole idea that we have found a way to make this affordable,
Mhm.
and we don't have any weird people rushing to sponsor it. But we're going to be selective if we permit sponsorships, because we don't want to use lose the integrity of what we're trying to do.
And the other thing is that I know in the future we will actually have where they can pay in advance, because I know some people
Yes.
are going to be concerned if they're going to have a seat at the table. Because as we go into the political season, we know that we'll have a big overflow. We actually were at almost at capacity on our very first one,
Yes.
and so there will be additional information that will be coming soon of how you'll be able to get your tickets in advance, and also be able to get in the room. And so I'm gonna tell you. This is the place that you want to be if you want to have true dialogue with biscuits, grits, and politics.
Well, it's two important points too, because it's not just limited to African Americans.
Mhm.
I had to make that point to someone, because this is a thing that's open to people who have an interest in dialogue and political discussion. It just so happens that we're spending time with us because it's by us, basically for us. But the door is open.
Mhm.
The one thing that I will guard against with it is we don't need people coming who look to get up and make long speeches.
Mhm.
Those people will be cut off. They will be set down, and if necessary, asked to leave, because we're not providing a platform, and it's not a place for people to come in and campaign.
Mhm.
Now, if you want to catch people outside and campaign, that's different. But I had to kind of make that point yesterday, that we didn't really care who was there as a candidate. It wasn't for candidates. It was for people who have questions, and a lot of us have questions.
Mhm.
And speaking of this, as I was coming in this evening, I was listening to a program on NPR that was making the observation that today, fewer than 40% of the American people have any idea of what the three branches of government are, or have even read the Constitution. And there was a greater discussion. They were visiting Paul Laurence Dunbar High School in Washington, D.C., where I come from, and they were talking about how there's a lack of emphasis on civics. And I kind of found that funny, because some 40 years ago, when I was a school board member in D.C., one of my biggest battles was to help get parents and students understand the civic process. And so now DC is a place that they're beginning again to talk about home rule. And it's kind of funny that they want to have this discussion because, again, some 40 years ago, D.C. had a constitutional convention. And as you know, my late wife and co-publisher, Jerry Warren, was a elected delegate to that convention. And if they ever name the state of New Columbia, she's the one that offered the motion to name the new state the state of New Columbia in D.C. and headed up the constitutional delegations commission after the scenario. So we have a lot happening in this time and age that we're living in. We still have people in Puerto Rico who are torn over not they want to remain a territory or be a state. And then we saw with the hurricane that came, the flood damage, we saw a resurgence of this racism in America because um, efforts were not made to get resources to them, and yet they have the same status as citizens in terms of it, in terms of this whole scenario. And so it gets to be important because a lot of people fled the islands coming here. They went to New York and to Florida, and they're going to be voting. And they're not going to forget that the president came down there passing out baseball caps and, paper towels thinking he was doing something.
Make America great again. Uh,
Again, yeah.
can I jump in? I know we're
Yes.
going to talk a lot about politics, but a couple of things that I want to talk about. I want to bring us all the way to California. You know how they say if you live in America, you blessed, and if you live in California, you doubly blessed. But if you live in San Diego, you're part of the chosen few. Well, we in California, and there's a couple of things that have happened just recently. One thing, the president saying that he is not going to help with the fires because Gavin Newsom, who is the governor, has not done what he was told to do about clearing brush and things of that nature. That's the first thing I want to talk about. And then
Hmm.
the second thing I want to ask you about is this real ID driver's license that we all have to get, or we're not going to be able to travel and everything else of that nature. So I want you to first go with this whole thing about I'm not going to help California with the devastation of the fires, and then let's talk about the real ID.
Well, let's set a backdrop for I'm not going to help California. I think even people in California don't know that California has the largest congressional delegation of any state in the union. We have 53 members of Congress and 2 U.S. senators, so that's 55 people. So we carry a lot of weight. And a lot of people, and maybe the president has forgotten, that when it comes to the dollars that are collected and they're distributed based on information from the census, we're in a position that we are entitled to get a large amount of federal resources coming to us based on our numbers alone. Now, unfortunately, the president is not in a position to start dictating uh, what we do with fires or how we manage our money. Again, he has not read the Constitution under Article 10, under the 10th. I think it's 10. I get confused sometimes when it's all running in my head. But the Constitution specifically says that all powers not given to the federal government in terms of legislative or lawmaking or the judicial, executive, or legislative, then those things are reserved to the states in terms of welfare. I think is the 10th or 11th amendment to the Constitution. And so he doesn't have authority to tell this state what to do. And I think we have a very sharp governor who is very fire concerned and conscious. And the issue is not so much the fires with the president. He's mad about the immigration issue. He's mad about the borders. He's mad about people being given refuge here. He's called us a sanctuary state. And anything that talks about doing anything for immigrant is an issue for this president. So the last part of his anger is the fact that California is a blue state. It has no possibilities whatsoever of turning red at this point in terms of the few Republicans are here. Matter of fact, there are more registered independents as an unofficial third party than there are Republicans in California. And he's also mad because we have a trifecta here, is what they call it. A trifecta is when one party dominates the governor's position, the Assembly and the Senate. And so we have a supermajority in terms of the Democratic Party controlling the state. So, of course, Trump can't do anything but get mad. But we also have the courts, we have lawsuits. Yes, he won one recently because the legislature passed a law um, to keep the president off the ballot in terms of him running again, unless he presented his tax returns. And it didn't call him by name, but it said that no one could be a candidate on the ballot in the state of California for the presidency without disclosing their tax returns. Well, the Court of Appeals threw that decision out just a few weeks ago and said that it was unconstitutional because the Constitution is very specific in terms of the requirement of age and being a natural citizen of the United States as conditions for running for president. And so we couldn't do any more. So those are the things he's upset about. Now, on the real ID, I think it's a sleeper, and it's gonna really get to be an issue for a lot of people. Um, One of the reasons we moved in that direction is that the forgers and the counterfeiters have gotten so good. It's why we had to change our currency. And we had to go to some elaborate arrangements for the new bills that we have because what happened some years ago is Saudi Arabia, in particular, because of all the money they had, they were able to get their hands on both the ink and the paper that we use to print our money. And before this big rush of money from oil revenues, it wasn't possible for people to get their hands on those items. And so they started making their own American dollars, which weakened our whole system in terms of what we have. And we, some time ago, with the Federal Reserve, went from actual gold on deposit in Fort Knox to floating the currency. And so the real ID is another one of those steps that we're going to nail down who the people are. It's going to be a problem for some of us because there's still, as I said yesterday, there's still a number of people who don't have driver's license and yet they were born here, and for different reasons they've had fires, there've been difficulties, records lost, people didn't keep up. Um, the Your birth certificate and your social security card uh, have always been bigger issues here on the West Coast than on the East Coast. On the East Coast, people didn't give that much thought to it because we just didn't have an immigration sequence. But we had a very racist immigration policy because you could come across the border from Canada into Detroit, and if you were blonde and blue-eyed and had the right pigmentation, people didn't even question whether or not you should be here. So a lot of people, uh, non-people of color, came into the country and still come into the country that way. They just walk across the border, they get away. But if you come from the South and you got a little bit of suntan and you got some other elements there, it's going to be a whole different ball game. So anyhow, this is going to be an issue, and we better start preparing to deal with it.
So I wasn't aware, but yesterday they had elections in different parts of the country,
Yes, we did.
and I hear that there's some angry Republicans based on the results.
There's some very angry Republicans because two of the major elections that Trump had his hands on was the state of Mississippi in terms of the governor's race and the state of Kentucky. And as you know, Kentucky is the home state of Mitch McConnell, the majority leader of the Senate, who is now being dubbed Moscow Mitch because he's taking a big Russian development project in Kentucky. And the people in Kentucky are so poor, they'll take money any way they can get it and wherever it comes from. So it's just been a whole different world. And a young man by the name of Brad Shear, a Democrat, won and beat Bivens out, Matt Bivens, the great Republican hope. And so Trump's upset. His followers are upset because he was in Kentucky and they were giving him the hoorah just before the election. So now they understand that everybody who is saying hoorah is not necessarily going, and they find that the Trump effect is now not transferable in a lot of instances. And the timing is significant because starting next week, we're going to have the open hearings on impeachment. And we think some people are going to get enlightened in terms of this. Mississippi was another state and a whole different story. Mississippi, conservative, still hasn't changed. I'm surprised that they just don't put a sheet with a hood on the flag down there and just replace it with the rebel yell because they just got so far to go. And yet we have some good, strong people in Mississippi, but they are kicking and fighting all the way. And so their Republican candidate won. And so Trump is going to try to blow that out of proportion to overshadow his loss in Kentucky. The question is, what does the loss in Kentucky mean? Because it should send a message to Mitch McConnell that while he might be safe forever, there are things that are collapsing around their ears, and this is stuff we need to pay attention to, Doctor Thompson, because you notice I mentioned yesterday, the point was made that in the South, when we had the big election to replace uh, uh, Sessions, the former Department of Justice um, secretary and the former senator, that the African American women voted in such numbers that they were responsible for turning out 95% of the vote for the winning candidate. And if you just go over from Alabama there into Florida, um, you find Florida is a very interesting state in elections. On election night, in the north um, westerly part of the state, is so solid red, and it just looks like there's a Republican wave that's going to come through there. But when you get way down there in Miami and Broward County, it's so solidly blue.
Hmm.
And the blues down there,
Miami-Dade County.
the Dade County, and Broward County,
Hmm.
the blacks vote in the 90 percentile ratio. They vote so much there that I remember carrying a story some years ago of how, in an effort to slow down the black vote on election day, the local law enforcement people started setting up checkpoints, traffic checkpoints, uh, coming out of the hood to all of the major precincts that blacks voted at, so that if they could back the cars up during the checkpoint, they could frustrate them and reduce them getting to the polls. But those people are so smart. They were known to stay in line for 8 and 10 and 12 hours waiting to vote. And we saw a spillover here in San Diego in the last election because for the first time that I know of, we had people standing in line up to 3 hours out at the register of voter on the election night. They had to extend the hours so that they could get people in to vote.
And I actually went and did an early ballot, and I
Yeah,
went actually to the election central, and it was a party. People
yeah.
was out there. They was in line. They was talking, telling jokes. Hey, high fiving people. It actually galvanized a lot of the community when they saw so many people out there standing in line. And I had to give our election person that's over our election a great job because they had so much resources out there that even though there were a lot of people, the line didn't, last forever. You were able to get in there, and they had the bodies to make sure that people could vote.
Well, we still have a lot to do in terms of the elections, and we have some issues because McConnell has blocked action in the Senate that would allow us to fund activity to secure our voting equipment in all of the different states.
Hmm.
And so he's blocking it. And that's almost like giving a handshake to Putin because they're
Hmm.
still coming. They're coming again for us. And I believe I think a couple of states are moving in the direction of returning to a paper ballot as well as using the machine. Now, one of the things that happened in terms of the voting machines under the Bush administration, the contracts for voting machines came out of Deboat, and the Deboat company was owned by big time Republican interests. Okay, like the former vice president, they all had stock in it, and so the whole thing was rigged from the beginning in terms of what was happening, and most of us just aren't paying attention. But I think you're right, this is very important. Just for the interest, I know we hit into a lot of things here, but again, our number is 1-858-251-6111. And you may follow us on the internet at godradio1.com. And so we still welcome your input. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back.
The San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper is San Diego's oldest and largest African American publication. We bring you news for and about our community. Your stories matter to us. Thank you for allowing us to serve you for nearly 6 decades. Your support enables us to continue to forge ahead, informing you with news tailored to your needs. In addition to subscribing to our weekly publication, consider using Voice and Viewpoint to promote your business and events. Call us at 619-266-2233 or send an email to ads@sdvoice.info for details on how to get started. If you have advertising needs, contact us. Our prices are both fair and reasonable. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Voice and Viewpoint or visit our website at www.sdvoice.info. Remember, a people without a voice cannot be heard.
When faced with the unexpected loss of a loved one, no one can fully be prepared to know the next steps to take. The emotional toll alone is oftentimes too difficult and hard to bear. At Preferred Cremation and Burial, we're here to help and serve you. Our trusted team of professionals have one goal, and that's to provide you and your family with the very best in quality and service. We'll guide you every step of the way in making informed decisions that truly honor the memory of your loved one. Preferred Cremation and Burial is located at 6406 University Avenue in San Diego. Call our offices today at 619-584-7000 or visit our website at www.preferredcremation.org. Preferred Cremation and Burial offers excellence in service. Call us today at 619-584-7000. We're here to serve you.
GODRadio1.com would love to help you get the word out about your products, your business, your event, your ministry, your services, and more. Our advertisement campaigns are cost effective and specially catered to meet your needs. Radio commercial ads are only $10 with a minimum purchase of $10. Advertisement packages may consist of radio ads, e-blasts, and social media campaigns. Call us up today at 858-251-6111, extension 505, and inquire about the services that are available to you. Our sales team will cater a package that fits your advertising needs. GODRadio1.com is here to serve you. Call today at 858-251-6111, extension 505 for our account executive, or email us at godradio1@mandaterecords.com.
Picking up passengers coast to coast.
Okay, we're back with you again. This is John Warren from the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper. Our program is called From the Desk of the Editor. And we, of course, invite your comments. You may reach us at 1-858-251-6111, or you may follow us, and we're streaming, and let's go to godradio1.com. We always want to share information and keep you aware that we can't put everything in print, and so we take advantage of this opportunity to reach you. One of the things we want to help you be aware of is that from October 15th going through December 31st, we're in what's now called open enrollment. And this means that this is the opportunity that you have to examine the kind of health care that you have. And under the Affordable Care Act, known to some as Obamacare, a lot of options have been presented to us, and we're able to make changes during this period because you can't change programs in midstream. And so it's very important. And if you're 65 or older, you go into Medicare automatically, and Medicare only covers 80% of your health needs, so you've got to have a supplemental. And the supplementals get to be very important out here because some supplementals might appear cheaper, but there are a lot of catches that come with that. For instance, a number of people are in programs like Kaiser, which is a HMO, a health maintenance organization. And if you're in Kaiser, you're restricted in terms of the doctors you may see. You have to stay within that group. The alternative to that is called a PPO. And a PPO allows you to select your own doctors. The program plan travels with you if you're out of state, wherever you go. And there's the issue of copays that depend on which program you have. And a copay can be devastating for some because every time you walk in a doctor's office, even if it's just for a consultation in a few minutes, whatever his rate is for an office visit, that's what you have to pay. If you have a copay or you have a deductible, you need to know if it's high or low. So it gets to be very important in terms of this situation. And then it's a question of what kind of coverage do you have? Is it comprehensive? If you want to have a low premium, that you're going to end up having a high deductible. And a high deductible is almost like your car insurance, you know. If you take $1,000 deductible and your car gets hit, well, you got to come up with the first $1,000, and then that low premium you had wasn't all that great when you look at it. And so, if you want to take a lower deductible, $500, then your premium is going to be higher. And so, a lot of people are spending great deals of money on insurance. There was a time that when people were hired by companies, they automatically were given health benefits, dental. All that day is gone because of the costs, escalating costs in terms of health care is still going up and out the window. Um, I just spent over 2.5 hours today changing my supplemental in terms of my health care package. And the change ended up saving me thousands of dollars over what I had when I first turned 65 and had to select a supplemental. So last year, President Trump cut the funding that was available to hire people to have more folks able to talk and discuss some of the things that I just mentioned. So if you don't have the funding and you don't have the knowledge, then you're out there fumbling, looking for someone, and not everybody's going to give you the best deal because some folks are going to be making sure that they can get paid or they're getting something out of it. And then California, as I keep mentioning, under Trump, he was able to get that a cancellation of the required payment that many young people were making to avoid the penalty of not having insurance. And so California has reinstituted, if you don't have insurance, there's a penalty, and you're going to have to pay it. And those dollars go to replenish the fund, using the expense to the younger participants who don't have the health needs to fund the program for the older participants who do have health needs. And so this is a very, very important time. Cover California is one of the best programs in the nation and is doing an outstanding job. And the Voice and Viewpoint has partnered with Cover California from the inception in terms of covering, getting information out. The insurance companies are not doing all that they could be doing. We have a lot of clinics now, and not everybody understands what a clinic is for or how the clinic might be used. And some of the clinics don't want to spend the money to do the outreach to help us understand what we should be doing. And a lot of the clinics are kind of shaping up not to be about the business of helping people that look like you and me. And so that's become a health disparity. There's no longer just a matter of insurance coverage, but now it's a matter of an attitude toward some people of color, which has been found to say that your pain and my pain might be looked at differently than somebody else having pain that doesn't have as much of a suntan. And we need to call it for what it is and pay attention to it. It's too late when we're standing in the emergency room. A family member, loved one is about to die or being mistreated. I must say that we have some very good facilities here. I certainly would give a shout out to Sharp Kearney, Sharp Memorial. I think it's one of the greatest hospitals in San Diego County. It's just outstanding. Of course, healthcare in La Jolla gets to be another whole different issue with Scripps and Thornton, and you walk around the hospital in La Jolla, you think you're at a resort hotel in terms of the way things are laid out. But there's big money up there. If you see the new cardiovascular center that's been built there by the same person who built the San Diego State Community Center, Student Center, the people there are billionaires in terms of dollars, and we salute them for their outreach. People like Rady, in terms of the dollars that they put in for the Children's Hospital and care. And so it's good that people who have are willing to share and they're about helping. But we still have an obligation to be informed because we're still responsible for our own health. So again, you know, Brother Thompson, you asked a question, and see, you make me give this long. Get to the point I can't give short answers. I'm sorry. There's so much
Well,
to
I
it.
think that it's so important that that we're giving the information out because in this season of open enrollment, a lot of people are not paying attention to the things that they need to do, and they're not aware. They don't have all of the information, and a lot of people feel like, well, Obamacare is going away, or California is going away, so we need to look somewhere else, and not knowing that certain things are not going to go away. But there's this fear factor that has been given to us in the dialogue of the nation that everything that was Obama is going away. And but we have ability at this upcoming election to make sure that we do not give anybody another 4 years to destroy great works that were done for 8 years.
Well, I think you sparked something else that I wanted to point out because a lot of people get confused. They hear Affordable Care, and then they hear Obamacare, and it's interesting how President Obama got labeled for everything that had anything for people. You still see people on the street every day giving out free phones, and they decide to call them Obama phones. Obama didn't have anything to do with the phones, but nothing is free, and we ought to be concerned when the government is so committed to putting a telephone in your hand. The telephone is a means of tracking you. Okay, and so everybody is rushing to get free. Some people got two and three free phones. Well, they might seem free to you, but you've been tracked, and it's been established that the busiest time for your cell phone is at night when you sleep. All the updates that are going on and everything that's taking place. Here's what observation I want to remind people of. A survey was conducted when President Obama was pushing Affordable Care Act. And when the Affordable Care Act passed, the survey went out and it had two questions. And the first question, and this was predominantly to those whites who were opposed to the president and opposed to health care, and a number of states turned it down. So the question was, are you in favor of the Affordable Care Act? And the response from whites was, oh, yes, 100%. And then the second question was, are you in favor of Obamacare? And the answer was, oh, no, don't want Obamacare. Then the statement was, did you know that Obamacare is the second name given to the Affordable Care Act, which President Obama put forth? And what many people don't get is when the Affordable Care was passed, there were triggers in it so that all of the program doesn't come online at one time. It comes on in segments and there are releases with it. And so that's why you saw in the midterm election that the American people, anybody who was for changing the Affordable Care Act was in trouble. And now you see these parents, yes, we want to have our kids on our policy until they're 26 or 28. Yes, our kids, the kids are basically homeless because they're coming back home to live. They can't afford to live on their own. And so you got all of these changes taking place. And in the midst of it, you have people who are trying to make it a matter of color when it's really a matter of helping Americans survive. And I think it's a very important piece. So I want to thank you, Dr. Thompson, for raising that issue for us because it is an important one. Now, the census, we're going to be hearing and seeing more as we move forward with the census because, you know, come January, the trusted messengers is what the people are called who are getting out there. And we're going to see people knocking on our doors, and we're going to see there are all kinds of grants being funded right now and programs put in place to do this count. And this count is so important because based on the president trying to put a citizenship question on the census form, even though the question was turned down and the census is conducted by the Department of Commerce, where the Census Bureau is located, the residual from the push for the question has been, according to surveys, to put a fear in the hearts of American people and people in this country, some legal, other illegal. Now the households are afraid of being counted, and they're afraid that if they speak up to be counted, that right behind the count is going to come ICE, the Immigration Custom Enforcement people, to snatch them from the homes. And if the president can maintain that fear level and the count is down, so that means that the number of people counted who are going to look more like him are going to be the ones that are going to get the greater share of the money over the next 10 years based on the reapportionment of the budget. So there's this subtle thing to it where if you're asleep, you miss it. And we need to pay very close attention. And I'll be doing future sessions on exactly how census tracts are set up and what they mean in the various ways in which they're used.
So, especially for San Diego, um, how do we galvanize our city to let them know how important this count is for resources, and and how can we assure that people that are being counted are not going to be visited the next day by ICE and other things, since they're sometimes there's working together to say, oh, we found something, you know.
Well, I think that there are a couple of things that can happen, both in the city of San Diego and in San Diego County. I think that our local elected officials can really step up to the plate and make statements of assurance to people. Um, we have places like National City, which is considered a sanctuary city because of the demographics of the Latino population there. Okay, and um, we have San Diego County. We have the Sheriff's Department, which is county-wide, and we have this whole issue of the extent to which law enforcement works with immigration and naturalization or immigration and custom enforcement in terms of arresting people. So we have to have more dialogue from people who are in positions of authority, be it the police department, the mayors of the city. They got to reassure people that it's okay to be counted and that whatever count information they give is not going to be handed over to the feds. And a number of states, I was just following one recently, I think it was today or yesterday, where the federal government is going to court to challenge local law enforcement who no longer will even let ICE have offices on their premises. Because what was happening is once people were arrested and identified as non-citizens, they were being held by local law enforcement until the feds could pick them up and take them to detention facilities for deportation. And so there's a pushback against that. Those are the things that are going to help us with what you're talking about.
Now I want to go to some international news, and I don't know if you have been keeping up on the attack and the massacre of the 9 American citizens that were in the a Mormon settlement,
In Mexico.
Mexico. And
Yes.
there's this whole thing that it's the cartels and everything else that nature. Is this smoke and mirrors again to distract the American public on what's really going on? What do you think this is all about?
Well, Mexico is a place that has to be handled very cautiously, depending on how far down and how deep you are in Mexico. I have friends who live in Mexico, south of Rosarita, in gated mansion communities, and they happen to be American citizens. Many of them are senior citizens, and they go about their business daily, and nobody bothers them. People know them. But at the same time, I think other people have to be very careful. And I know in a couple of instances down there, cartel family members bought property within some of these compounds, and it ran up a flag in terms of the community, and people became scared. I think we need to understand that I don't, in any foreseeable future, I don't see any government in place in Mexico that will be able to control or curtail the cartels. 2 weeks ago, they made an attempt to arrest the son of El Chapo. It resulted in 13 police officers being ambushed and murdered, and it resulted in some citizens being killed in the follow up. And these people have more firepower and weapons than the folks that if you're in a checkpoint in Mexico and they have them all along Highway 101, um, the soldiers that are at the checkpoints, a lot of them are just kids. They're young kids, and they got a nice uniform, and they gave them a rifle and some authority, and they're not the kind of seasoned people that are going to be the fighters against what's taking place. And so I think that people should travel there at their own risk. I make phone calls and send cards to my friends, but I don't have any desire to travel south of the border. And different people are affected differently in terms of travel.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I think that right now that we're seeing that traveling, and not just in Mexico but around the world now, has there's a lot more red flags that we have to be very mindful of, and that the freedom that we used to have just to travel and not be vigilant to the atmospheres that we're in, and the explore. You know how people say we love to explore. Well, now it's explore at your own risk, because once they know you're an American citizen, you can be a victim of people that either love Trump or don't love Trump.
Well, so much of this is the fault of, and it might sound racist when I say white Americans, okay, because Americans have traveled the world with an arrogance. Only people in the world who only speak one language, and yet they think that the world's got to learn English rather than them learning the languages of the people of the world. One of the few places in the world still not on the metric system when the rest of the world is, and we don't know what,
Meter.
a kilometer is or whatever. We're not teaching it, and even though we buy our tools, they're in metric and the whole thing. So, but there's an arrogance that goes with us, and the arrogance is a part of what many of us have come to label white privilege. That I have a right to do whatever I want to disregard you, your culture, whatever. You kind of think of Cortez landing in Mexico, and there was the equivalent of somebody coming to your house and get out the car and step on your front yard and put a flag up and say, I now declare this property belongs to the king. Really? It ain't your property to declare. And so we have that mentality that's at work in America. And I think that um, a lot of Americans will pay for it. And I think that there are those who are sensitive, but I think we ought to give a lot of thought to where we travel. No question at this point.
And one of the last things that I think that we have to also be very mindful of is just really, like you said, not to be arrogant, to understand the culture, and to take enough time to understand where we're going, and even parts of their customs. Because there are certain things, like, I was talking to a friend, and she said that they were traveling, and she was a part of a reggae band, a Big Mountain, big band, Grammy Award winning, and they did a concert, and I think she said either Taiwan or Tokyo or something of that nature. And after the concert, they were taken over to a very rich person's house to have dinner. And she said, as they prepared the dinner, they sat
Said a what?
a pigeon, with head and all, but it was cooked and
Yeah.
everything in front of everybody. And that was their delicacy. And she had to make a determination at that point, that did she get up from the table and not eat the pigeon and insult the people, or to tough it out and eat the pigeon.
Did she eat the pigeon?
She did the next best thing. She shared it with one of her friends
Yeah.
and said, I know that you look hungry. let me let you have this. I am officially a vegetarian.
Okay,
And
okay.
they respected that it was her dietary needs.
Yes, and it was done with diplomacy,
Yes.
and that makes a difference.
Yes, and I think
Yeah.
that's so important. It's not that we might not like it, but it's how we deal with situations when it's contrary to our dietary needs or our social acclimate at that time.
And I think you're very right, and that we have to be more sensitive, and we have an opportunity for that right here in San Diego because we have so many cultures here.
Mhm.
And I know one of the things I've tried to do over the years, the Voice and Viewpoint, is bridge the gap between San Diego's African American communities and the African communities that we have here, with respect for the differences within those communities, with respect for instance, until recently when they did the peace, the problems between Ethiopia, Eritrea, looking at the politics of people here from different components of Ghana or Kenya or Nigeria. I mean, it's just so many things going on, and we have to be sensitive and pay attention. And I think the opportunity starts right here at home. I
You
I I just think it's great to just keep people aware.
hmm and I think that that might be one of our shows where we get the Eritreans and the Somalians and get a few just to hear not for their battle and what came from their homeland, but how are they doing here in the United States and how are they developing their place here in our city.
Well, we've done that with the Voice and Viewpoint before. That's why our logo says serving San Diego's African and African American communities. And several years ago, we held a major town hall meeting at the Jacobs Center,
Hmm.
and we had at least 6 to 8 African countries with leaders from their organizations participating, along with the leaders from the pretty well known African American organizations in our community. And so it was a very important meeting because I know on the African end, while we were dealing with social services, they were able to get more interpreters, which is what people needed. And we try to open the door in terms of doing more business with them. And I've certainly over the years have pushed to get them more involved in the paper. The Voice and Viewpoint carries an international page, and we have opened it up to people from those communities being able to publish with us. Offering to even carry the pages in French, since that's a language that many of them speak, and Swahili too, if it works. And so we're open because as far as people looking at us is concerned, they all see us as the same, while we're trying to make all of these false differences between ourselves. So I wanted to mention again, remind people that as we're moving down the pipe, we have two big things coming up. Um, in January, we're going to be celebrating the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King. Voice and Viewpoint publishes a special issue every year that brings together highlights from Dr. King's life so that you're not just looking at sound bites and thinking that the only thing he did was I Have a Dream. And then in February, we have our 60th anniversary gala, and tickets are going now. Tables are 1,000, individual seats are 100, sponsorships are coming in. We are limited to 600 people for this event, and we hope that we'll be sold out by December in terms of it. It is a true gala. A lot of people are having events that they're calling galas, and they're really just chicken dinners, and they're just kind of confused. Okay, a gala is a classy event where people are dressed up, and there's a diversity of entertainment, and there's a class element to it, and we live up to that when we do our event in terms of the entertainment that we offer, the level of class that we give to the awards and the people that we recognize, and so those are our galas. So for some reason, in the past 20 years, whenever we bring a title to something, people grab it and they misuse it. The Voice and Viewpoint was the first entity to start talking about town hall meetings and just letting people know what a town hall meeting was. Next thing we know, every two people in a phone booth were having a town hall meeting. Dr. Thompson, you remember when we started having gospel and we started having golf tournaments, and we were probably the first big black element to go to Torrey Pines and hold a major tournament. Next thing you know, everybody was holding a golf tournament. So they say form of flattery, and we accept it, but we don't want people to get fooled when you have somebody inviting you to a gala. Just make sure it is a gala and it's not a chicken dinner. If it's chicken dinner, that's okay. We don't do chicken dinners at our gala. We don't do chicken, but I think that we offer a level of sophistication. The women dress very nice. The men are expected to come black tie tuxedo, and they got enough time to get one if they don't have one, and if they can't come that way, I urge them not to come at all. We don't sell tickets at the door. And this is not one of those things that you just crash in. When we say we're building class and institution integrity, that's what we mean. So anyhow, this has been John Warren from the Desk of the Editor with the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. You may always follow us or reach us on the internet, sdvoice.info. And of course, with our program here, godradio1.com. And even if we're not here, we encourage you to go to our website link where I now have over an hour program up where I do a session from the Lemon Grove Historical Society. I have a piece on impeachment, Constitution, the Federalist Papers, Alexander Hamilton, and the role that we play. And I give you insight into where we are with Donald Trump and where we're going to go. So there's no reason for us to be in the dark when information is available. We thank you so much for joining us. We thank GOD Radio 1, Dr. Thompson, for his gracious hosting of us and having us participate. For those of you who hung in and listened and those who will listen to this after it's archived, we thank you for your time, which is the most precious thing that you can give. Make sure you spend some time in prayer this week. Talk to God about somebody other than yourself. And until next time, be blessed.